Smith Show starts right now.
The Stephen A. Smith Show here with you over the national airwaves of ESPN Radio and ESPN News. Number to call up is always 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. ESPN Radio. Check your AM, FM listing in over 250 plus markets across the United States of America. Check us out on ESPN Radio on Sirius XM Channel 80. Check us out on ESPN Radio, nationally televised on ESPN News. Stephen A. Smith Show, reminding you that Golick and Wingo will be live from Jacksonville, Florida this Friday, covering the Florida-Georgia matchup. Part of ESPN Radio's Fall Football Tour, brought to you by Marathon. Get 5 cents off every single gallon every day with Make It Count rewards from Marathon. To sign up, visit MakeItCount.com or download the free app. Also, ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. With more than 30 unique coverage options available, Progressive knows small business. Learn more at ProgressiveCommercial.com. On the line with us right now, outstanding NFL analyst for the family, outstanding contributor to ESPN's First Take, to ESPN's Get Up in the Morning, also NFL Live, former two-time Super Bowl champion with the New England Patriots, former New York Jet. The one and only Damian Woody is on the line with yours truly. What's up, big boy? How you doing, man?
I'm good, my brother. How you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. Listen, man, before I get to asking you this question, I apologize for having to annoy you with this, but I'm going to have to let you listen to Baker Mayfield talking about the Cleveland Browns and getting into it with a reporter. Let's listen to what happened.
It seemed like there was a lack of urgency there. There was something going on.
There was a penalty, so we were negative yardage.
No, but there was a lot of time between snaps.
Well, when the penalty happened, then we're behind the chains. No, stop saying but. I just told you the clock was running and we had a penalty. Do you want to give them the ball back? No, you don't play. You don't know it. That's just plain and simple. Was I happy with the drive? No, we didn't score points. It's the dumbest question you could ask. What? Jesus, Tony.
That was Baker Mayfield snapping at a reporter in Cleveland. There's a lot that I could say about it. I think that Baker Mayfield is digging a hole for himself that ultimately he ain't going to be able to get out of. I like the candor. I like the abrasiveness at times, the fiery combativeness, rather, there is. But I think sometimes it's incredibly misplaced. I wish he was as fiery against the opposition as he is against the media, but it is what it is. Your thoughts about what you're seeing from Baker Mayfield at this particular juncture, Damian Woody?
Well, I think it's Baker is learning how to channel that energy, that chip on his block that he's had for like going back to high school. It's really served him well up to this point. Having all the success that he had at Oklahoma and being a Heisman Trophy winner, going on to being the number one pick in the NFL draft, where there were a lot of naysayers, doubters, but the reality is this: sitting at 2-5, okay, and the reporter that asked the question is.
Hey, Damian, I'm going to interrupt you. Let me know when your signal gets clear because we've been having some trouble with our lines. I apologize to my listeners for that as well. Make sure you let us know when you get a clear line, and we'll definitely make sure to have you back on. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. I'll get back to Damian Woody in just a second, but that's not the only storyline I wanted to get to. I wanted to get to Jamal Adams as well because earlier this week he called out Joe Douglas, general manager for the New York Jets, for trying to trade him. Douglas obviously denied that, said he was just listening to calls and all of this other stuff. He was not trying to move Jamal Adams at all. And I agree with him. That's his job, to listen to phone calls. I mean, just because you're listening doesn't mean that you're trying to move somebody. But Jamal Adams wasn't finished with that yesterday. He clapped right back at Joe Douglas and those who would believe what Joe Douglas had to say in as it regards not wanting to move Jamal Adams. Listen to the Jets safety speak as candidly as he always does.
You know, I hold myself in a high regard. You know, when I heard that I got the call, that my agent called me and he told me what was going on, you know, it definitely hurt me. You know what I mean? I hold myself at a high level. You know, the Rams don't take calls on Aaron Donald. The Patriots don't take calls on Tom Brady. You know what I mean? That's where I hold myself in that regard. So
here's where it gets difficult for me, ladies and gentlemen. I love me some Jamal Adams. I love the fact that that brother is in this town. He can ball. He's a rough rider. He's as real and authentic as it gets. And I have a strong level of affection as a brother for him. You can't mention yourself in the same breath as Aaron Donald and Tom Brady. You just can't do it. Not when you're playing for the New York Jets. And oh, by the way, a legitimate argument could be made. Why the hell do you want to stay with the Jets? But I'll get into all of that with my man Damian Woody, who's back on the line right now. Before I get into Jamal Adams, finish your point, Damian Woody, about Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Stephen A., like we were talking about on First Take, man, I love Baker. I love his bravado. I do. But I think you have to learn to channel that energy, because the bottom line is the Cleveland Browns are 2-5 right now. All right? And that energy that he's displaying is a detriment to the bigger picture. It's a detriment to the team. So I understand he had, him and the reporter, I think Tony Grossi from the Cleveland area, they don't necessarily get along, but he needs to understand that he's the CEO, he's a representative of the Cleveland Browns, and when you have outbursts like that, that's only going to be more fodder for everybody to talk about. So that's something he's going to have to learn, and as he continues to mature, I think he'll get better at.
How worried are you about the Cleveland Browns with him leading them?
I'm worried about the Cleveland Browns. Number one, listen, they have a rookie head coach who basically last season was a position coach. Okay, you're talking about leading a franchise that's been abominable since the inception, since they came back into the league as an expansion team. That's a big task for a guy who was a position coach. Then on top of that, you're helping guide a second-year quarterback who's very combustible. You have Odell Beckham Jr., who's very talented and combustible. Jarvis Landry. They got a bunch of young players on this football team. So I always felt like it was a mistake with the hire at the head coach, man, particularly with these young fellas that they got to groom and get ready to go.
Well, you preaching to the choir with that. I've been lamenting the hire of Freddie Kitchens as head coach for a long time. To go from a positional coach to the offensive coordinator to the head coach inside of a year is utterly ridiculous. Really inside of 8 months, for crying out loud. But that's exactly what happened with Freddie Kitchens, which is absolutely amazing to me. We're talking to Damian Woody right here on Stephen A. Smith Show. ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Jamal Adams, I just played some sound from Jamal Adams responding and clapping back at Joe Douglas, general manager for the New York Jets, who swore he wasn't trying to trade Jamal Adams when he fielded calls from other teams about him. What did you make of that whole situation with Jamal Adams and the New York Jets?
Well, number one, I think pride is playing a big factor in all this. Jamal Adams is a prideful person. Very good player. There's no one can dispute that. Very good player. But Stephen A., here's the facts in this whole situation. Jamal Adams, as great as he is, he's a luxury for a 1-6 team right now at a position that's not necessarily a premium position when you're talking about building a team to have sustainable success. So GM Joe Douglas was literally doing his job. When teams call in a situation like the Jets who are 1-6, inquiring about a player, you have to listen. That is his job description. So I think this was a situation where, Jamal was in his feelings. Obviously, the chat about the Dallas Cowboys, and for the listeners out there, Jamal Adams is from the Dallas area. And, I think the agent played somewhat into this as well. But this is a business of football. A lot of people, they see all the play on the field and, all the amazing stuff, but they don't see the dirty, the ugly side of it. And that's a business where things like this can happen. That's something that he has to come to grips with.
It's interesting that you say that because, listen, man, I'm no fan of the New York Jets. I think that they've been an abomination over the last couple of years. I think the hiring of Adam Gase is a disaster. I don't think he deserves to be the head coach of the New York Jets. He should have never been brought in. But I still got to come to the defense of Joe Douglas from the standpoint, it is a business, and he has an obligation to listen to phone calls and to listen to what somebody has to say. I can sit up there as the GM and say, I'm not trading Jamal Adams at all. But if I am a Jets team that's en route to a 1-15 or 2-14 record, and I've been 5-11 and 4-12 over the last 2 seasons respectively, what if somebody, not to say that this would happen, just throwing out a hypothetical, what if I picked up the phone and listened and somebody says, we'll give you 2 firsts and a second for Jamal Adams? I mean, how can you not take that? So how can you not listen to the phone call? And I think that Jamal has to understand that. But my biggest thing, Damian, is this. Here's the part. This is the first time Jamal Adams has ever uttered a word out of his mouth, and I don't believe him. I want to be here. I want to stay with the New York Jets. Who the hell would want to stay with the New York Jets? I don't believe that, Damian. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I don't believe that a Rough Rider and somebody who can ball like Jamal Adams literally wants to stay in New York City with these New York Jets. I don't believe it.
Well, listen, I've always said this, Stephen. Before I came to New York, man, I always said that if you win in New York, you're a made man. There's nothing like winning in New York City. It's a tough deal with the New York Jets because they haven't been relevant or haven't been good in a long time. But you know, when the whole thought of going back to play with the Dallas Cowboys, was like a reality, I'm sure that was very enticing. I do believe I absolutely agree with what you said, that I don't think he wants to be here, but he's going to put on a straight face and know that and face the reality of he has no choice in this matter. He has no say in this matter moving forward. So, again, Joe Douglas was doing what his due diligence, doing what he was supposed to do, was just trying to build a New York Jets football team that can be sustainable for a long time.
Damian Woody right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Let's go around the league and just notice what we're dealing with here. The Patriots are 8-0, but the Baltimore Ravens 5-2 atop the AFC North are getting set to go up against them. What do you anticipate in this encounter between the Patriots and Lamar Jackson and the Ravens?
Well, this is by far the Patriots' biggest test, this season. I think last week when the Patriots faced the Cleveland Browns, they were exposed somewhat by the running game, and Coach Belichick knows that. And here comes the Baltimore Ravens, leading the league in rushing by over 20 yards from the next best team. Lamar Jackson is a dynamic quarterback. Obviously, they incorporate him a lot in the running game, and that's something that's going to bear watching. I think that's going to be the key to the game. How will the Patriots contain Lamar Jackson and that rushing attack? Can they make them one-dimensional and make Lamar Jackson beat them through the air? If they do that, they got him.
Based on what you're seeing from the Oakland Raiders in the first 7 games of the season, in which they stand 3-4, what would the Raiders be if Antonio Brown was there and had stayed there?
You know what, Stephen A., that's a very good question, because I'll tell you what. The Raiders, to me, are a surprise team in the NFL right now.
I agree.
Nobody, I would say there's one person that actually, before the season, said something glowingly about the Raiders, and that was our very own Louis Riddick. But there was no one that we basically had written off the Oakland Raiders, and John Gruden is coaching his butt off. The Oakland Raiders are relevant. The Oakland Raiders are coming around. They're not there yet. Obviously, they play in the AFC West, but man, if that whole thing had worked out with Antonio Brown, with the Oakland Raiders, with that offense, and with Josh Jacobs in the backfield, and that Raiders offensive line, boy, that Raiders offense would have been scary. I can tell you that.
I got to give John Gruden a lot of love. I really, really do. I think he's doing it. I know they're just 3-4. I think he's doing one hell of a job in Oakland this year. I really do. They're far more competitive than I thought they would be, and they deserve a lot of credit. And he got screwed over by Antonio Brown, because if you think about it right now, I believe if Antonio Brown was there, I think you're looking at a 5-2 Raiders team right now. I really do. Instead of 3-4.
I don't dispute that. I don't dispute that one bit. I think they got some work to do defensively. They need to continue to add more pieces on the defensive side of football. Mm-hmm. But offensively, they can run the ball. They got a pretty good offensive line. Derek Carr is playing well. Tyrell Williams coming over from the Chargers is playing well. Hunter Renfrow. They got pieces, man. They got pieces on that Raiders team. They just need to keep accumulating pieces. And this Raiders comeback is going to come quicker than most people think.
Let's talk about two teams we would dare never say something like that about, and that's the Miami Dolphins and the Cincinnati Bengals. Who's the worst team in football?
Wow.
Take your time.
I'm going to say Cincinnati. I am. I'm going to say when I watch the Miami Dolphins, they're bad. Mm-hmm. No question about it. They are bad. But I do see them compete. They competed against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yes, they did.
They competed. They've actually, to me, have gotten better. They've gotten better. With their roster being stripped down because of this whole rebuilding, tanking, or whatever you want to call it, mm-hmm. They're actually competing. So if I had to look at the two organizations and say which one is heading in the right direction, it'll be the Miami Dolphins.
Let's transition to the NFC conference. If you're the Carolina Panthers, particularly after you just got blitzed by San Francisco like 51-13, now that the honeymoon is over, per se, for Kyle Allen, do you take him out after last week's performance and bring Cam Newton back in, or do you leave him in there?
Listen, I still think that you leave Kyle Allen. He's only lost one game. And I know it was an embarrassing loss. I get it. But the 49ers are going to do that to a lot of teams. The 49ers are that good. They are legit in every facet of the game. So, yeah, that was a setback for the Carolina Panthers. But I think the Carolina Panthers are more formidable with Kyle Allen, being that he's a pocket passer, than a diminished Cam Newton as an athlete at the quarterback position.
Damian Woody right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. When you go to the 49ers and you say they're that good, obviously everybody's just thinking about their defense. Nick Bosa is a monster. He's going to be Defensive Rookie of the Year as far as I'm concerned. Some are saying he should be in the MVP conversation with 7 sacks after 7 games or so. We know their secondary can defend the pass. But what else is there about them that we're missing? Clearly, it's not just defense and the way they play defense that has, warranted all of the praise that they've received. What specifically are you seeing from the San Francisco 49ers that should alert everybody to the fact that they're legitimate title contenders?
Well, Steve, listen, everyone talks glowingly about their defense, and rightfully so, but they have one of the best rushing attacks in the National Football League. They're dominant in the running game. And on top of that, they got a play calling Kyle Shanahan, who, to me, is one of the best offensive minds in the National Football League. There's a lot. People just need to watch the 49ers. They do some very interesting things offensively that make you say, wow, from a design concept, that Kyle Shanahan is just he's a wizard. He really is. He's a wizard as far as designing plays. So the only component that needs to be shored up, honestly, is Jimmy Garoppolo.
You mean porn star? You mean porn star Jimmy?
Porn star Jimmy. If Jimmy can elevate his game to the next level, Stephen A., I don't know. I don't know about the other teams in the NFC if Jimmy G really starts coming along.
Damian Woody right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Looking around the NFC conference, I'm thinking about Dallas and Philadelphia from the standpoint that Philadelphia did absolutely nothing before the trading deadline expired. You and I debated that. You thought Cleveland should have done something. I thought that Philadelphia had more of an urgency. A wide receiver like A.J. Green from Cincinnati, he's going nowhere, deserves so much better than that situation. Would have been nice to grab him. Would have been nice for them to grab Darius Slay to add to their secondary. What can Philadelphia do now that they didn't acquire any new players to ultimately capture the NFC East crown?
Well, I mean, listen, the only thing you can do at this point, at this juncture, man, is just you need your guys to come back healthy, and just start playing better, particularly in the secondary. You know, those guys have to start playing better on the back end. They got guys up front that can stop the run and get after the quarterback. But if you can't cover people on a consistent basis defensively, you're going to run into a lot of issues. So for the Philadelphia Eagles, they need to, on defense, they got to do a better job of covering. If they do that, this Philadelphia team, I hope people aren't writing off Philadelphia. I hope people aren't doing that, because if they can get Deshaun Jackson back, which is a big part of you know, from a schematic standpoint, the deep threat, if they get him back and they're starting to run the ball well, this Philadelphia Eagles team is going to be right there. They're going to have a say in all of this in the NFC.
Damien Woody right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. My last question. Let's go to the NFC North. Some people have Aaron Rodgers elevating above Russell Wilson as league MVP right now. I have it the other way around, but fully aware that Aaron Rodgers can catch him. Who would you pick for MVP right now? And what do you think about when you look at the NFC North as we speak?
Well, I would give the edge to Russell Wilson because I think he's been more consistent all year. Now, Aaron Rodgers is coming on like wildfire. Like, he's just coming on like crazy right now. But I'm going to get a slight edge to Russell Wilson. But the NFC North is fascinating to me. I picked the Minnesota Vikings to win the NFC North. They were making me look stupid early, but it seems like they're settling in, and they're looking pretty good. Now, the big test for them, when they play these teams, when they play the Packers, and some of these other elite teams in the NFC, then that's going to tell us everything about Minnesota. But Kirk Cousins right now, is on fire.
Damien Woody, appreciate you, bro. Looking forward to this Sunday slew of games. I'll talk to you sometime next week. Thanks a lot.
All right, no problem, man.
Take it easy. One and only Damien Woody right here with Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News, 888-SAY, ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. Back to your calls and more in a minute, so don't touch that dial. This is Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. By the way, by now, you've probably heard me talk about my computer career